The following is for information purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. All opinions and views expressed by the contributors to this podcast are in a personal capacity only. They do not represent the views of Progressive Equity Research or any other organisation mentioned in this podcast.
Okay, it is Thursday, the 24th of July. Welcome back, Jeremy. Good to have you on the show again.
Hi, Gareth. Yeah, good to be here.
So we missed last week, so there's a bit to catch up on, but it has been a very exciting fortnight, I think, on the global markets. Trump seems to be finally delivering on a few trade deals. There's still, sadly, precious little sign of peace in the Middle East or in the Ukraine. Feels like there's quite a bit to talk about. So what have been the highlights for you over the last fortnight?
Yeah, so having secured his big, beautiful bill, Trump started dialing up the tariff noise the week before last. As evidence is growing, I think, that he regards his, what I'd call his pay-to-play model for the access to the US economy as his new magic money tree.
Yes.
And to be fair, the revenue to date generated by the tariffs is actually quite impressive from a US Treasury perspective. Customs duties hit a record of $64 billion in Q2 of this year, which is a full $47 billion more than the same period last year. What is less clear is who's actually paying this and what the consequences will be. And I think the way tariffs impact the US economy in terms particularly of inflation will forge a critical path for Trump's second term. But he's definitely moving the goalposts in global trade and geopolitics. It's just the debate really raging on how inflationary this will prove to be and what time frame that might play out. Critically, that plays into his choice of the next chair of the Federal Reserve. I mean, who it's going to be and when and how the appointment's going to be made, because there's been several trial balloons on how they're going to depose Powell and how publicly or not he is actually going to be defenestrated. And every day we seem to get more evidence that between them, Trump and Bessent have built up a veritable Alamo of weaponry to take down the Fed and its chairman. But on each occasion now, they've sort of backed away from pressing the button, so to speak. But every time they make that move, you see weakness in the dollar, bond yields go up. And every day that happens, it feels a bit more like an emerging market.
Yeah. It's been really interesting the way they've not just attacking Powell, they're also attacking the way that the Fed as an organization is spending money on its new uber luxurious headquarters, says Trump from the gold-plated rooms of the Oval Office and the extraordinary surroundings of the White House. But you're right, it does feel almost emerging market style in the sense that the executive branch is attacking the supposedly independent central bank and doing it in plain sight and without any real repercussions from their own party. But there are clear repercussions from the markets. You're absolutely right. And yeah, just cutting back to the tariffs point, I think you're absolutely right. It's very interesting the way that Trump is now starting to see what he would see as the benefit. I guess the other almost unsaid benefit is that even if it is the US populace that's paying these tariffs or paying higher prices to allow the tariffs to be funded, in some ways they almost might not notice unless they see it showing up as genuine increases in prices of goods at the till. They will pay those effectively taxes almost without noticing. So it'll be interesting to see how the politics around that plays out as well. So yeah, a lot to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And what about Europe?
Well, so far, no deal has been done. And we've had news that Japan has stepped up to the plate and done a deal. But the EU is presumably mainly on holiday till September. But the threat from Trump is that he's going to impose a unilateral 30% tariff. And the talk is that the EU has put together a package of retaliatory measures. Now, subsequent to that, Bessent has been talking more positively about the scope for a Japanese-style deal. But if the EU managed to replicate the deal with Japan and get a sort of 15% baseline tariff, the interesting aspect from the UK perspective is that there will be a persistent gap between what is paid by the UK and by the rest of Europe. That clearly has implications. Besant has said that progress has been made with China. Talks are due to resume with China in Stockholm next week. And I think this is the big one, but it's also a bit of a shot in the dark. But, China so far has played pretty hardball with their stance on rare earths. They've got some concessions already in terms of access to certain technology that they were previously prevented from getting in the shape of some older generation NVIDIA chips and that kind of thing. So, with the Chinese economy still on the surface, at least growing sort of 5% points in the second quarter, as we've seen, there is still scope here for China to continue to play hardball and turn this into another episode of trade tantrums. But financial markets seem to be sort of shrugging all this stuff off. And meanwhile, liquidity seems to be driving markets. And actually, whatever hurdle is put in the way by Trump and his wilder moments on social media, the market just seems to shrug its shoulders and move on.
What about macro data across the last week or so? What have we been seeing in terms of the numbers?
Basically, as far as the main economies are concerned, inflation remains stubbornly elevated. With the UK measure for June, we saw a figure of 3.6%, up from 3.4% in May. Also in the UK, we've got a continuing signs of weakness in the labour market, with headline unemployment rising to 4.7%, and payroll indicators from the HMRC data that we've got something like a further 41,000 jobs were lost in the month of June, meaning that employment has now declined on that measure for 8 consecutive months. So that hand in hand with public borrowing data that showed the June figure exceeding market expectations is all painting a picture really of stagflation, frankly, and an autumn budget that looks like it's going to contain tax hikes. But the performance of Rachel Reeves in her Mansion House speech, where she seemed to be laying the framework for the growth of the UK economy in the hands of the regulators, makes you think that the people in charge here don't really have much idea what's going on.
No, that's right. Meanwhile, you mentioned that you'd seen a report from EY about a number of profit warnings. That sounded quite disappointing, actually. So what was the detail on that?
Well, it's an EY report indicating that London-listed companies issued a record number of profit warnings in the second quarter of this year. They measured 59 in total, but apparently was 20% higher than the same period last year and the highest level in 25 years. Now, I think that's quite interesting that in the context of that, the UK market and other stock markets, have been grinding higher. But just thinking about today's data, we got 2 reasonably high-profile warnings. One was from the fragrances business Treatt, which I think is at least warning number 2, possibly the third warning, but a highly regarded company all the same. And the other one was from Judges Scientific, another highly regarded high-quality business, which it indicated a slowdown, if not a warning previously, but both citing fundamental changes to their markets in the US, one in the consumer area, the other in the public funding of scientific research, but also both highlighting that the obvious FX headwind over the period. But an interesting report because it runs counter to one's perception of where we are in terms of the UK market. And I think probably indicates that the market here is being driven more by capital flows than by raw fundamentals.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. It certainly feels that way. The markets are steadily moving up, but it doesn't really feel like it's moving up through any excitement or exuberance. It's more a technical move.
Yes. So what have you been looking at in the UK this week?
Yes, there's been 2 particular pieces of note, both of them actually from the property space or building and construction. So yesterday we had Van L, which is a ground engineering contractor. In fact, it's the UK's largest ground engineering contractor. They're involved in housing and other developments. And obviously, given what they do, they're relatively early in the phasing of those developments because you have to do the groundworks first and the foundations. Vanel reported their year to April 2025, which was in line with expectations, albeit against clearly a very challenging backdrop. We made some pretty small reductions to FY 2026 at the PBT level, but otherwise we held those forecasts pretty much stable, and we made no changes to FY 2027. So yeah, they've been struggling through difficult markets, but it doesn't feel like things are dramatically worsening. And then this morning we had Severfield, which had almost an identical story, actually, that they also reported, for them it was their year to March, which was in line with previously downgraded estimates. For Severfield, there were no changes to our trading forecasts for the next couple of years, but the dividend was cut. So still things difficult for them. But in both cases, I think the companies are beginning to come through and they've cut their cloth accordingly. And hopefully there'll be better times ahead as they can meet or exceed the forecasts that are out there. The other thing I thought was worth just touching on was that there's a slight difference in style as of focus between those two in terms of geography, because Vanel has just exited a Canadian business, whereas Severfield is kind of doubling down on an operation they have in India. So it was interesting to see the way that different management teams or different parts of the market are responding to the ongoing difficulty in the UK market, one of them by effectively exiting an overseas troubled business, and the other one by actually hoping that they can really move to great things over time through their Indian operations. So it'll be interesting to see over the coming quarters or years how those two different styles or approaches play out. But yeah, an interesting week in the markets. How about next week? What have we got on the macro calendar coming up?
Well, it seems to be quite a busy week. We've got jobs week in the US. So we've got non-farm payrolls on Friday, and with a slowing rate expected, likely to be nearer the 100,000 level than last month's 147,000. So continuing weakness in the US labour market. We also get the first take on US GDP for Q2 of this year, data which is expected to show a big jump from last quarter's negative number, a jump up to 2.5%. So this is the expected impact of tariffs working their way through the GDP data. So that's obviously got to normalise, but 2.5% is clearly a positive number. In contrast, we'll also get GDP data for the same period for the euro area, which is expected that these are going to fall from 0.6% last quarter to 0.1%. So a slowdown quarter on quarter. Probably the political highlight of the week is going to be the Fed rate decision on Wednesday, which is not expected to see a change from the prevailing 4.5% policy rate in the States. But obviously the political context makes the press conference maybe worth watching in terms of the body language and some of the commentary from Jay Powell. And always the outlier, but I think still significant. On Thursday, we get the Bank of Japan rate decision, which is an economy and a financial market which retains, via its Japanese government bond market, the potential, I think, to spread dislocation across the other bond markets and more widely globally. So as we saw this time last year, with political uncertainty becoming more elevated in Japan with the upper house elections last weekend, albeit they've done a trade deal, it doesn't look as though the government that has negotiated that trade deal might be around for too much longer. So, this is really breaking out into the open in what is historically a very politically docile country. There are potentially all kinds of consequences.
You're absolutely right. It was, I think, about this time last year, Japan really rattled the markets very, very quickly and very dramatically. It certainly felt to me at the time that the global stage felt at that point much more settled and able to withstand that kind of shock than perhaps it is now. I think there is a bit of a febrile nature, especially if the Chinese trade deal doesn't get signed soon. You've got a potentially worrying backdrop out there. So anything surprising or shocking from Japan could be really quite broadly felt. So yeah, it'd be interesting to keep an eye on Japan. But yeah, a lot going on. We've got the jobs data, GDP, and 2 interest rate decisions. So yeah, an exciting week ahead, and look forward to catching up this time next week to talk it through. Thanks very much.
Okay, see you then.
Good stuff.
Brought to you by Progressive Equity.